Random House Audio presents Boiling Mad, Inside Tea Party America by Kate Zernike. Read for you by Kirsten Potter. Prologue. Honestly, it was hard not to stop at the spectacle on Freedom Plaza in downtown Washington, where several thousand Americans had gathered to celebrate their anger on a perfect spring day. There was Representative Michelle Bachmann, conservative darling and all Minnesota nice, cheerfully raging against gangster government. 2 years from now, Barack Obama is a one-term president, she taunted, the words echoing off the surrounding walls. There was the rapper performing a Tea Party anthem, the former Saturday Night Live star singing a song called "A Communist in the White House." It was easy just to scan the now familiar signs, Barack Hussein Hitler, go back to Kenya, and conclude that you had seen all you needed to know. But to truly understand the Tea Party, to understand how these protesters with goofy hats and "Don't Tread on Me" flags had become a political force powerful enough to confound a new administration and unhinge the Republican Party, you had to cross Pennsylvania Avenue and head down a steep escalator to a small auditorium inside the Ronald Reagan Building. Watch a crowd of a few hundred, dressed mostly in the sneakers and dockers uniform of the typical older tourist, sitting rapt as a panel of conservative activists in their 20s explained how to take over the country. It was Tax Day 2010, and these Tea Partiers, young and old, were marking it with a seminar that blended modern managerial advice and leftist organizing tactics. At the podium stood Brendan Steinhauser, a 28-year-old college football-loving Texan who had voted for Ron Paul in 2008 and could quote from the classics of Austrian economic theory, but included among his heroes Bayard Rustin, the gay black civil rights leader who conceived the 1963 March on Washington, most remembered for Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. The Tea Party movement had started out small, Steinhauser told the crowd, in the hundreds, but now some polls showed that 25% of Americans supported it, remarkable growth in just 1 year. That percentage could reach 51, he said, but he needed the help of the people in this room. "It's got to be a prime focus of what you do," he urged. "If you have 25 people there on your first monthly meeting, you should shoot for 50. Ask everyone to bring a friend. Try to set goals for yourself. Set out where you want to be at the next meeting. Only if we focus on our numbers, check ourselves against other groups, are we going to get there." There were 2 books everyone in the room should read, Steinhauser said, repeating the titles twice because most everyone was taking avid notes. Dedication and Leadership by Douglas Hyde and The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. The first, he explained, outlined how the Communist Party recruited in Great Britain. The second would help them understand the marketing of social phenomena, sneakers, but also ideas. "If you read those 2 books and apply the lessons and tactics learned in those," Steinhauser said, "I think you're really going to help yourself and really become a true community organizer." "Uh-oh," someone said loudly. Others groaned. "Don't reject that label. Embrace that label," Steinhauser insisted. "True community organizers are what this movement is all made of. We don't like that term because now we have a community organizer-in-chief who got his lessons from Saul Alinsky. I say, let's read Saul Alinsky. Let's read Rules for Radicals, and let's use it against them." The crowd was his again. "Yeah!" people cheered, sustaining their applause. "Do we need to do better to reach into new communities? Absolutely," Steinhauser continued, looking out at the sea of faces, almost all of them white. "I encourage all of you. Recruit in the cities, the inner cities, in the suburbs, in the rural areas, in the barrios. It doesn't matter, wherever you live, wherever your neighbors are. Get them involved and then go to some other part of town and get people involved who maybe you don't know. Maybe they're not in your social circle. Maybe they don't go to your church. You need to go and get to know these people and let them know that this is the kind of movement that welcomes everyone, that encourages everyone to participate. Only if we do that can we reach our goals." As the crowd cheered, he pressed on. "Don't give up on the apathetic, the people who voted for the Democrats. Maybe they voted for Nancy Pelosi the first time. Maybe they've had a little buyer's remorse," he said. "But don't write them off. Go out there, recruit people, bring new blood, new faces into the movement. Focus on that. There is nothing more powerful that we can do for this movement than to go out there and recruit our friends and families and strangers to become a part of it." The contrast was striking. The panelists on stage were baby-faced despite their suits and stylized stubble, while the people in the audience were seasoned, as one young panelist gently put it, twice their age or more. When one young speaker mentioned the importance of using social media like YouTube, an older woman with a drugstore disposable camera and a flag brooch wrote down carefully, "You too." But this was how the movement had grown, this mashup of young and old, abhorring the left but learning from it. It was what made it so contradictory and so combustible. Loosely assembled and suspicious of anyone claiming to be its leader, the Tea Party had allowed the rallies and the signs to serve as the public face of the movement. But to stop at what you saw there was to miss what the Tea Party was, and how it had swiftly burrowed its way into American life and wiped out the promise of a post-partisan politics that had accompanied the election of President Obama in 2008. Its critics dismissed the Tea Party as astroturf, looking like a grassroots movement, but actually fake and manufactured by big interest groups. Puppets of the Republican Party, they said. Cranky old conservatives hung up on abortion and gay marriage, now upset that a black man they didn't think was a citizen was living in the White House. Who could take seriously people who wore tri-cornered hats and invade against the communist threat 20 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall? It was all a media creation. Just ignore them. They'll go away. Certainly, the Tea Party had been fertilized by well-connected Washington groups like Freedom Works, where Steinhauser worked, and also by Glenn Beck, the newest star at the Fox News Channel, who created his own brand of Tea Party by calling for his fans to join 9/12 groups, which were to return the country to the unity of purpose it felt in the days after the terror attacks of September 11th, 2001. But even aside from these well-connected supporters, the Tea Party was an authentic popular movement, brought on by anger over the economy and distrust of government, at all levels and in both parties. It certainly had its fringe elements, the birthers insisting that President Obama was a Kenyan-born Muslim infiltrator, the people carrying posters of Obama as a witch doctor, those who insisted the federal government was going to sequester its citizens in re-education camps. As some Tea Partiers clamored for states' rights, it was impossible to ignore the echo of the Southern segregationalists from the 1950s and 1960s. Little surprise that the movement had failed to attract non-whites in proportion to their numbers in the country at large. Still, this fringe did not define the Tea Party. Nor could you explain it as simple partisan politics. While most Tea Partiers were Republicans, they were fighting hand-to-hand with the party establishment in places like Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Colorado, and Arizona by mounting primary challenges to establishment candidates once considered sure to win and seeking to take over the Republican Party in much the way that Barack Obama's presidential campaign had won the 2008 Democratic primaries, by sending supporters out to become captains of their local voting precincts. By the spring of 2010, many of the most active Tea Party organizers regarded the rallies the way casual Protestants do church on Christmas and Easter, the perfunctory appearances. They were too busy operating as a kind of shadow party, hosting candidate forums and meeting with officials, Democrats as well as Republicans, who solicited their opinions and sought their blessing. They were planning not just for the midterm elections that fall, but for the long term. And this wasn't just in off-the-grid Idaho or the Deep South. The Tea Party was everywhere, along the eastern seaboard, which Barry Goldwater said in the early 1960s he would saw off because there were no votes for conservatives there, and in swing districts where elections that determined control of Congress were often decided by 1,000 or so votes, and where presidential candidates fought every 4 years for the fickle.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?